Welcome to Down to Earth Astrology and Primal Girl Wellness. This is Miss Jenny, and I am your astrologer. This is part 4 of our series, Dogs of War. This particular video series, or this particular video section, sorry, will focus specifically on Biden, Obama, Roosevelt, and the predictive signs of the times when we look at these charts. Now, today is the 19th as I record this, and as expected, right on time on the cosmic clock, the 18th was a trigger day, a hot button day for the Biden administration. And we did, in fact, on the 18th, receive a statement from our president about Ukraine and the prospect of war developing as he's trying to prepare us for what he intends to drag us into. He and Putin, they're both equally involved in this. So don't think I'm bashing on Biden here. Okay, so before I get started with the series, I just want to remind you guys of something, and this is very, very important, right? You're going to hear a lot of squawking on the media and amongst ourselves about the possibility or probability of war right now. Nobody wants this. Nobody wants this unless they're going to profit from it or they just hate their children, because their children are the ones who are going to get sent into this. For the rest of us who love our children and don't make a profit off of war, this is not something we ever want to see. Death, destruction, and children getting hurt is not on our list of high points in life. So when you hear people, I want you to remember this whole year, we are in a battle of dark and light, and the darkness and the light that we're referring to is not out there. It's not other people. The darkness and the light that we are battling is inside ourselves. Everything happening outside of us is a reflection of the landscape inside ourselves. So that dark and light we're battling is within us. Okay, we have to do the work inside ourselves to change the landscape out there. So the people who spend the most time casually talking about the prospect of war, civil war, international war, pick your war, where people get hurt, innocent people get hurt, people who are most casual about this, right, as it were an academic discussion over a water cooler, are always the people who will be the least affected or the least likely to get drawn into that conflict. So right now, when you listen to the media and the politicians and these people going on and on and on, incessantly about the possibility of war, remember, these are also the same people. Notice how calm they are, and observe that they are also the same people who are the least likely to get drafted or dragged into conflict with actual weapons and having to kill people or be killed. I'm just saying. So with that said, I'm not saying to ignore it and not give it value and attention, but what I am saying is to recognize that we have a lot more power in this situation than you may be realizing right now, because we're all getting whipped up into a panic. Anxiety levels through the roof and everything else. Jesus God, we're in the middle of a pandemic and everything else. Anyway, so remember, as a group, we are mightily powerful. We are a force for good. There was an experiment in Baltimore years ago, I'll put the link down below, where many participants, there's two of them, actually two experiments, across the country and also in Baltimore, where they did meditation. The entire group did meditation, focused meditation, all at the same time. They all vibed out at the same time together in unison. And one of the things that they found was the rates of violent crime inexplicably dropped dramatically during the hour that the meditation was going on. The rates of accidents and everything else, all these tragic things dropped significantly in terms of statistical presence during this time. So it could be a coincidence that these people just happen to be meditating and focusing on, positive light, love, people thriving, people being healthy and safe, at the same time that things inexplicably got really, really quiet in terms of the violence noise on the radar. Or it could be a direct result of everyone having their mind right and in unison together. So this is what I'm saying we're looking at right now. We have to do the work. We have to work on our inner selves. We have to go inside ourselves and get our minds right if we're going to change the direction of this ship. Some conflict may be unavoidable. I strongly suspect that Putin may have had COVID, and it is affecting his thinking. I don't think his thinking is as rational or clear as it could be. And I suspect he may have had COVID. We'll never know, obviously. But if that is the case, that would explain a lot, right? So some conflict may be unavoidable, but we don't have to end up in another war. We don't even have to end up in a conflict if we work hard enough at it. So, but we, you and I, we are the ones who have to do the heavy lifting here on a very spiritual or mental level, whatever way you want to put it. Because at the end of the day, the administrations and the governments that we're under, these are a handful of people. They're literally, it's two men and a handful of people that are engaging in saber rattling with each other. But the rest of us, we outnumber them by thousands, millions. Together and collectively, when we put our minds together and make our minds right and we focus on where we want to go, which is not war, we can do amazing things in terms of changing the course and direction of this ship. But we've got to do it now because March is going to be a big, hot, dicey month, dicey and spicy. So if you genuinely want your children to not end up in war, if you genuinely believe that your mind and what you focus on creates the future you end up living in, right now, today, moving forward for the next 3 weeks is the time we all need to get together collectively as a group and start getting our minds right and focusing on a different outcome. So that's your reminder. Now, let's get on with some history. You're not powerless, even when you feel like it. There's still something you can do. It just may take longer to see results from it, so just remember that. Okay, so here in this slide, what we have is Biden's natal chart on the right, and we have the 2020 inauguration chart, or the chart for Congress and the administration on the left. Now, historically, before we get into Biden as president, let's look at the inauguration chart. So historically, when we have this particular planet showing up in this configuration, which is a void of course moon, in an inauguration chart, there's always suspicion that the presidency obviously will not go as planned, but also the possibility that the presidency will not go as planned because an early removal from office. And, you know, given that our current president is somewhere between the age of 80 and death, and the presidency always ages people, like accelerates the aging process and makes, they go in young and come out looking like they're 100. Being between 80 and death and having your aging process accelerated is not a happy thought. So the possibility of the man dying in office is a very real and distinct possibility, even though he seems to be fairly healthy for an 80-some-year-old guy. So astrologers have had a lot of conversations about this. Now, if you don't understand what a void of course moon is, what a void of course moon is and what it means is that the moon has no connections to any other planets until it changes signs again. So it's made the last of its connections or contacts with other planets in the heavens, and it will not make new contacts or another contact until it physically changes signs and starts a whole new cycle. So void of course moons can be complicated and tricky to work with. They're good for a number of things. They're just not good for actually getting normal mundane business done, right? Or normal mundane plans. So we've seen this before. We actually have a void of course moon in the 2009 inauguration chart for Obama. And if you remember those years, those were absolutely void of course moon years. And we'll talk about those in a second. So what we know now, looking at this chart for Congress and the administration under Biden first term, is we can expect a whole lot of nothing to get done. Things will not go as planned, and certainly not smoothly, and not without a lot of effort and a lot of things going sideways often. And we're seeing that. We're starting to see some of that. But in this case, it looks like a lot. It looks a lot more like sabotage, honestly. And that's not entirely impossible. And here's why. One of the other things that we're looking at, the big dominant aspect in this chart, is Mars Uranus square Jupiter Saturn from the 12th to the 10th. So one of the things we would have expected to see in this chart is a real push-pull or sabotage between progress, things that literally are begging to be overhauled and reformed and changed drastically and radically. Radical change, the push-pull between radical change and maintaining the status quo. So, and there is no middle ground. That's the problem. And this first term of the presidency, Progress wants to be made, needs to be made. The urge and drive and push to change everything radically and move into the future with a whole new way of doing things that are more efficient is absolutely right there. The problem is there's a lot of resistance from people in senior positions, meaning senators who've been there longer, people who've been in Congress longer, even our president himself possibly. Speaker of the House, all of these people who've been there and have established themselves, right, in positions of authority and seniority in Congress, they're the ones who are going to give us the most resistance in terms of maintaining the status quo. And no, we're not changing a damn thing. Sit your butt down there, Spanky. This is our first term in Congress. Now, that sounds pretty awful because nobody wants to hear that, right? But it's not all bad. It's not all bad. Because one of the things that we can see, and we will see this? This Venus, remember, Venus and Mars just crossed over together during this phone call with Putin about Ukraine just a little while ago. And so that degree is important. But right here, we've got Venus and Neptune in sextile. And Venus is approaching Neptune. I promised I'd keep the astrological jargon out. I'm so sorry. And what that suggests is that things of charitable works, right? Things that are humane, things that are meant to benefit everyone, will have at least, given all the resistance we're looking at during his first term, the opportunity to be pushed through, and at least that will get through. So what did we see? We saw that I think it was the child tax credit. We saw a whole lot of saving measures during the pandemic that were pushed out, and those are absolutely charitable humanitarian things. So that got through. The problem is the rest of the term for this first term, it's just gonna be resistance, resistance, resistance. Because there is no middle ground in this particular term. It's literally radical, dynamic, wholesale, forceful change, or it's absolutely maintaining the status quo, even if it means we all sink in the quicksand together and suffocate, right? Ugh, God, these people. Anyway, now let's look at Biden's chart for a second, and then we're going to look at the two together, and we're going to move on so we can kind of get into what we're looking at possibly in the next 6 months with this Ukraine situation. So here's the thing, and remember, I'm only an astrologer. Take it for what it's worth. These are only my opinions based on what I'm seeing here. Okay, so the first thing is Biden is a quadruple gajillion Scorpio. He's got a huge stellium in Scorpio. And to make things more complicated, the weight of those Scorpio planets sit in his 12th house. So, if I had to choose a president, this is not who I would choose. And the reason is, this is not somebody who is comfortable or, more importantly, operates best under scrutiny. The reason is this heavy Scorpio emphasis and all this 12th house stuff. This is somebody who navigates backroom, like smoky backrooms and backroom deals and all sort of behind the scenes stuff like a genius, like a master chess player. But they need that cover to be able to get stuff done. They do much better when they have some semblance of privacy and cover for their actions, right? They get a lot done that way. Hence, he was a phenomenal asset in terms of the presidency during the Obama administration, right? He was brilliant and brought a whole lot of firepower to the administration as the vice president during Obama's terms. Brilliant stuff. But being the power behind the throne is not the same thing as being the front face, the front man or the face of the throne, right? Being out in the open and everything you do being scrutinized and subject to examination and on full public display. This is not comfortable or natural for him. More importantly, this is not how he operates best. So his effectiveness, just personal feelings aside, one way or the other, because I'm not banging on Biden here, but I'm saying in terms of being effective, he is not working from his strengths when you put him face forward on the throne as a target, under the spotlight for everybody. So I personally would never have chosen this particular type of chart to put in a position of figurehead leadership, which is what the president is. You know, somebody working behind the scenes to get stuff done. Absolute mastermind here. But put him in the throne where everybody's taking target practice at him and he can't hide behind anything. Not great. He's much more weakened in this position. So I can only assume, because the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, chose him for us. Do not ever forget this. They chose him for us. We didn't choose him. They chose him for us. This was the candidate we were given to choose from, or choose the Republican candidate or whatever, right? Like, we could have had any number of nominees on the DNC ticket. This is who they chose. So I can only assume that with this, this not great, temperamentally suited to this particular job, that this position may have been given to him as a gimme. So this may have been a retirement gift, as it were, which is a really poor way to give somebody a promotion, but that's a whole other conversation. Lord knows we see plenty of that in our regular jobs, right? Okay, so there's that. Now, the other thing that concerns me about the Biden chart, and with anybody who takes the office of president, right? And, you know, because it's such a sensitive position, you really, really want to know that you've got somebody that you can put your confidence in to lead, obviously. Trump had his issues, Biden has his. Believe me, this guy's no saint either. The challenge here is that Biden carries a Mars-Pluto square, and his Mars sits in its natural sign of Scorpio. Remember when we talked about Putin, Putin is Mars, 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 Mars. You don't see it so obviously because of all that graceful Libra in his chart, right? And all that Gemini. On first impression, you wouldn't see just exactly how aggressive or combatant he is. But underneath the heart of all of that for Putin, this man is a combatant. He is a fighter. He is constantly looking to conquer and dominate because it's his nature, right? Scorpions are going to sting. Putin's going to conquer and dominate. He can't help himself. It's what he does. For sport or necessity, that's just what he does. Tiger can't change his stripes. Well, Biden carries Mars and Pluto in square to each other. Now, he's got all these planets in Scorpio to begin with, which means that these two planets are even more emphasized. The energy or nature of these two planets is even more emphasized. With a Mars-Pluto square, what you get is someone who has the capacity to be irrationally obstinate. This is the kind of personality that once they dig their heels in, they will literally cut their own nose off to spite their face to prove a point. So Putin is not one to be challenged because Putin is a little on the detached side in psychoanalytic terms, I suppose. Putin's not one to be challenged for a number of reasons, mostly because he's not really connected to things around him. He's very capable of sacrificing anything near close to him if it means winning or conquering, right? Or not being dominated or not being challenged. He's got no qualms with it. He's a very scary man. Biden, with this Mars-Pluto square, and anybody who carries Mars-Pluto square, especially if they've got a heavy emphasis in Scorpio to begin with, these people are irrationally obstinate and stubborn. Once they make up their mind that this is it, I'm not having it anymore, they will dig their heels in, and there's a destructive quality to Pluto and Scorpio that's not something you want to engage in or stimulate. That Mars-Pluto square really underscores that destructive tendency, self-destructive or otherwise. So this is somebody who's perfectly capable of destroying, like the classic Scorpion story, right? They're perfectly capable of destroying themselves before they will admit surrender or defeat. Because remember, the thing about scorpions is that if you corner a scorpion and you give it no avenue for escape, a scorpion will sting itself to death before it will let you capture it. Right? And this is what we have here in spades, okay? Because it's Mars-Pluto, both are rulers of Scorpio. Mars is in its own sign of Scorpio, and he's got this heavy emphasis of Scorpio. This is somebody who is a very dangerous man once that Mars-Pluto gets activated. And I don't mean dangerous like he's a threat to your enemies. I mean he's dangerous because he's a threat to everyone around him, including himself, if that Mars-Pluto gets activated. That is a very distressing thought. Luckily, count your lucky stars, we live in a democracy with checks and balances, unlike Russia that does not have that. So in Russia or even China, where Xi Jinping or Putin both say, you know what, this is what we're going to do, and everybody has to do it or heads are going to roll, literally. Here, We have a democracy with checks and balances. So he can say whatever he wants and try to do whatever he wants. We have literally a series of checks and balances and groups of people around him that are there in place specifically to prevent him from doing things that are disastrously destructive to either himself or to the people around him, like, us, you and I. So there's that. This is, and I don't want to give you guys nightmares, but just to put the fine point on the pencil here, right? Just to drive that point home about his stubbornness, his self-destructive stubbornness, right? Is he's got the moon and Taurus on top of everything else. Moon and Taurus, if you know people with moon and Taurus, boy, oh boy, oh boy, you know these people, once they make a commitment or a decision about something, nothing's going to move them. They will talk about going down with a ship. Moon and Taurus people are the definite. If you go into Webster's dictionary and look for the word stubborn, you're going to find a Taurus underneath that. These people will literally stick to their guns no matter what. So the good thing here with Biden's chart is that Moon and Taurus, for everybody with Moon and Taurus, they are slow to make up their minds. So it takes a while for them to come to a decision that's a committed decision for them. So we've got time. These are not impetuous people. The challenge, of course, is that Moon and Taurus, once the decision is made, they will not abandon the decision. That's it. Like literally, if they will not. If the ship is going down, they will stay with the ship all the way to the bottom of the ocean. So that quality coupled with that Moon and Pluto that we just talked about, this is a little scary. This is a little scary. So we better hope and pray that we've got a good, strong administration and Congress around him that's not filled with wackadoodles trying to send us all to, the end of the world times to get us through that. Oy, okay. Now, do you need a drink yet? Okay, now here are some good things. Okay, so here's some things that I found. So the first thing is in the Congress chart, right, our administration right now, we've got Pluto on the midheaven. This means that this term, this Biden administration and this term is absolutely huge. Remember, I keep saying we are on the precipice of great change, and we really, really are in this country. With Pluto on the midheaven, Pluto on the angles in a chart, personally or otherwise, you're always going to find great, dramatic, absolute upheaval, sometimes to the point of traumatic loss. This is not to say that we're going to have traumatic loss in the country. Don't panic. But what it is to say is that reform, repair, regeneration, review, revise, going back over deep, like digging up weeds by the roots as opposed to just the topsoil, getting in deep to where the root of the problem is and pulling it out so that you can start over fresh and brand new, is the absolute energy and theme of Pluto on the angles. With Pluto on the midheaven, this is absolutely about getting in deep to where the rot is and cutting it out. And when we think about that, suddenly all this resistance, right, between progress and the status quo makes all kinds of sense. Because if the rot runs deep enough, the people who want to maintain the status quo the most are the ones who have been benefiting from all the corruption and rot. Why would they want that to change? More than that, why would they want to be exposed for that? It makes all kinds of sense that they would fight the hardest and will fight the hardest to keep things as they are. Don't touch that. Don't turn that log over. Don't turn that log over. You don't want to look under there. No. Look the other way. So there's that. Now, the good news is that President Biden carries his Jupiter right here on top of that Pluto midheaven point, right? So his Jupiter is right here. Now, in theory, Jupiter should be a force for change and healing and growth. Jupiter is a benefic planet. It is also a healing and lucky planet, or it can be. It can also expand problems. It can make things bigger because it is a gas bag planet. Boy, talk about a big bag of hot air. So with Jupiter on that Pluto midheaven, we could go either way, but I'm hoping that we're going to go in the right direction. I've got hopes for our presidency because we need it, right? We really need that right now. We need repairs and we need protection. So Jupiter with that Pluto midheaven conjunction at the top of the chart suggests that Biden may prove to be a protective, beneficent force for the country and also the changes that need to be made. It could also, if things go the other direction and he does not have good character, it could also be an expansion and an exaggeration of the corruption and rot that's already there, right? More of Trump, only worse. So, because politicians do what politicians do, we will see. He's just now entering, I think, the first 2020, first 2 years, yeah, we're in the midterms, the first 2 years of the presidency. And again, the administration is not going to have a lot of success getting things done because everything is going to be an uphill battle with people trying to maintain the status quo. So we haven't necessarily seen this play out yet, but it's not over yet. We've still got 2 more years to go. So we could still see this radical, dramatic, positive, reforming change before this is done. So let's cross our fingers and keep our minds and thoughts there, right? Now, the last thing before we change slides is here. So the other thing I was looking at is what happens when we put Biden and the administration together. How well supported is the administration, meaning Congress, not just his cabinet, to his presidency? Well, this paints a pretty interesting picture. So remember, in the administration chart, we've got Mars, Uranus, and Jupiter, Saturn in square, which means, it's the progress versus the status quo. This is going to be the big fight over and over and over again with this administration. In Biden's chart, remember, we've got that Mars-Pluto square. He's irrational, obstinate stubbornness. Just cut your nose off to spite your face kind of stubborn commitment. Ugh, right? And he may need that to get this Congress or this administration to get anything done. Now, when we put the two together, here's what we end up with. So the first thing we end up with is there's going to be some, in spite of the support that he is receiving from his administration, there's still going to be a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of pissed off people in this Congress because we've got Mars Uranus opposing his Mars. So in a lot of ways, he is going to inflame and or anger people who are of a more progressive mindset because it's going to feel like they're going in two different directions through the entire administration. Even when there are concessions and compromises, it's still going to feel like they're going in opposite directions. And we've already seen signs of that. This will not change. This is what we're dealing with the whole first term with this administration, assuming he serves a second term. Now, it gets better because it's not just the progressives that he's pissing off. In this particular case, remember this Pluto, right, that we're already carrying at the top of the chart for Congress, right, and the administration. Well, his Jupiter Saturn, or I'm sorry, our Jupiter Saturn. Hold that thought. Congress is Jupiter and Saturn. The administration is Jupiter and Saturn, which represents the status quo we keep referring to that's giving all the pushback to progressives. Well, his Pluto, okay, is right here opposing that. So he's pissing off the conservatives. Well, I'm not going to say the conservatives because we don't know it's the conservatives that are responsible for this, trying to maintain the status quo. But whoever these people are, the parties that are trying to maintain the status quo, he's going to piss them off because ultimately, while the progressive elements in Congress are going to be challenged and irritated and inflamed, right, because they feel like they're going in opposite directions, here, this little piece of pie is even uglier because the people who are trying to maintain the status quo are literally going to perceive Biden as a veritable threat to their very existence. So while they thought that the progressives in the administration were a problem and there's an active battle between maintaining status quo and making progress, this right here, his Pluto, he is seen, perceived as an active threat to people who want to maintain the status quo. So all the things that are not working in your life, thanks to the way the great machine is set up in this country, right? Corporations, government, bureaucrats, laws, taxes, all this sort of stuff, all the things that are not working for you are the status quo. The people who want to maintain this obviously benefit from those things. It's not us because we want change. Biden's Pluto, which is always devastating, complete upheaval at the root, literally digging stuff up at the root where the rot in the core goes deepest and removing it. That is how they perceive him in his relationship to them. So yeah, this is going to be quite the first term and we're only halfway through it. Now, I put this chart here because I really thought this was interesting. So In 2009, good Lord, in 2009, Obama was inaugurated. Now, inauguration charts, we, if you agree with me that inauguration charts represent the administration more than the presidency singularly, then we also know that with the Obama administration in 2009, they carried a void of course moon at 29 Scorpio in the 7th house. Now, void of course moons obviously indicate that not a whole lot's getting done, right? It's just you're spinning your wheels. The void of course moon, unless it's for specific activities, always shows us where we are spinning our wheels. And that is, if you remember, if you were paying attention and you remember back, 2009 was the year that's pretty much what Congress did the entire time. I think somebody said they worked all of 4 days that year, while the rest of us were slaving, toiling away. They just didn't work. They just didn't show up. And it is noted, you can find references to this all over the place, where there was, before Obama started the administration, before he was inaugurated, there was an actual discussion among a handful of Republican seniors who specifically said, who specifically said that they were going to do everything they can to make Obama a one-term president by opposing everything he tried to push through so that he would have nothing but a string of failures by the time he got to the next election. 2009 was the year that Republicans brought Washington to a near standstill several times during Obama's first term over debt and other issues. Fascinating stuff. Go look it up. That's your void of course moon. Now, with all of that said, why did Obama still remain so popular, right? How did he get anything done that year? Well, I'll tell you, baby. Let's take a look. The moon at 29 Scorpio is on the fixed star Toliman, which is a very lucky fixed star. So there was a lot of protection around this administration and their efforts at this time. It just goes to show that sometimes God is looking out for you. Now, some other things, let's take a look at the administration. So for the Obama administration in 2009, one of the things we have is we've got Mercury, what they call Cazimi, the sun, or in the heart of the sun. So communications became a very important, protected, powerful theme with this administration. And in fact, it was. This is the first administration that went to social media and television programs and stuff to talk to the public, as opposed to the limited press releases occasionally done with journalists. So social media, television, average Joe television programs, all of these things are Mercury. Mercury in the heart of the sun gave it incredible power and benefit and protection. And indeed it did. Indeed it did. Also, too, we have Venus and Uranus together in Pisces. Venus is compassion and charity. Uranus is social change and progress. Venus and Uranus together in Pisces, humanitarian charitable acts. And in fact, that year, Obama did a lot in terms of trying to save the common man from suffering more than he had to. Now, at the same time, that administration carried Saturn opposing Venus and Uranus. So again, more fights about the details, right? And you're going to have to scrape it up somewhere else. So a lot of, I don't know, because I'm not a historian, so you guys can fill me in on the blanks, but it would appear to me that a lot of sacrifices would have had to be made in terms of social services in order to give to other greater charitable works. So literally they, in many ways, had to rob Peter to pay Paul, but in this case, it looks like they may have had to borrow or take from social service funds to pay for other things that were more urgently needed in terms of saving people from worse suffering at the time. Mars is sextile Venus and Uranus, so progress, progressive things, humanitarian things, all of these things would have been favored at the time. Also, to Jupiter and the North Node is with the Sun and Mercury, further underscoring the popularity and the protection and the benefits for this particular administration in spite of their void of course moon status, which is making everything difficult, and this meanwhile opposition here, making things even more difficult for them to get anything done. Okay, so that was the void of course moon in action in an inauguration chart. So it doesn't always mean, it appears, that a president will die in office. Thank God. But as in a chart reflecting the administration in Congress, it definitely shows the dynamics that we were operating with very clearly during the Obama administration, which we're seeing a repeat and variation of now during the Biden administration. So I thought that was interesting. Now, even though we are living in a democracy, he is still our president-elect and leader. So he is the point man that we all follow as we navigate down this trail into the future, navigate through the woods of uncertainty here. So one of the things that I did is I pulled up Joseph Biden's solar return for the 2022 year. So this is going to cover his birthday from November into 2021 until November of 2022. So this solar return or year ahead prediction, personal year ahead prediction for him, is in effect until next November. And it's a little weird because now we're talking about an individual versus a public figure, right? So uh, let's be loose with this because we're still looking at how these things fit, these pieces of the puzzle fit together in terms of interpretation, public versus private, right? So the first thing that is operative for him through this year from November to November, November 2021 to November 2022 is a tremendous amount of pressure on him. So a couple of things happening. One, he's on Mars return. That's not making me very happy. And that Mars is setting up T-square to Uranus and Saturn. And Uranus and Saturn comes out of the 1st and the 3rd and the 9th. So we've got Saturn's in the 1st, Mars is in the 9th, and Uranus is in the 3rd. So in a personal chart, this indicates that this particular year, an individual is going to have no end of issues and heavy, I want to say wailing, but that's not going to make sense to other people, repercussions and demands and onerous responsibility for their words and their deeds and also their agreements. So Uranus in the 3rd squaring Saturn in the 1st is going to indicate that there's going to be a great hindrance or restraint put on the individual where their mouth and their mind are running away with them. So there's the desire to move forward at breakneck speed and get things done now, last week, yesterday, go. But there's a lot of restriction and weight that is put on the person to get them to stop and slow down. Also, too, with Saturn ruling that 12th house, there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of concern about whether they're even doing the right thing. So this right here, between the 1st and the 3rd, there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of self-doubt that would be happening this year that is operative through all of these things because it's the back and forth, the push and the pull between am I doing the right thing? Am I being too bold? Am I not being bold enough? Like just a lot of that stuff because the mind is racing. Uranus is in the 3rd, right? The mind is racing with ideas and possibilities and wants to go, but that Saturn in the 1st, which is also experience and stamina, is also saying at the same time, slow down, stop, take a breath, reconsider. Now, with this happening, we've got Mars up here in the 9th house. Well, anytime you've got planets heavy in the 9th house, it typically suggests that there's heavy involvement in either higher education or foreign affairs. I don't think Biden's going back to college anytime soon. So we're going to assume that these are all foreign or international affairs. With Mars there, and it's back on his natal Mars. He's on Mars return this year. Heavy involvement in foreign affairs. So for the rest of the term, it's been relatively quiet so far, but certainly moving forward for the rest of the term, he is going to be deeply and heavily invested in foreign relations and foreign affairs. And with that Mars back on his natal Mars, and remember, he's got Mars-Pluto square in his natal chart, that irrational, obstinate behavior, it is extremely important that he checks himself and does not get carried away with these impulses. Mars is action and Uranus is impulse, and the two together can represent impulsive actions that we can absolutely rationalize to ourselves. and also cutting, like cleaving things. So but see, he's got that big honking Saturn right there, right between them, saying, stop, 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 look both ways. So this whole year until November of 2022 is going to be a back and forth push-pull conflict within himself about the impulses and the actions he wants to take immediately versus the restraining elements in his life that are holding him back and saying you need to stop and take a breath and look both ways and really think about this before you do anything. I'm not terribly thrilled with this particular configuration in his chart because this could theoretically suggest issues with, obviously, meddling or conflict, more specifically conflict with international affairs and other people, right? Conflict with foreigners. This could absolutely, the Saturn first could absolutely be his age showing. So there may be some issues with, I hate to say it. There may be some issues with his health that he's dealing with. There may be some declines that he's dealing with. We won't know, obviously, but that may be something that is also causing some concern about what he should and shouldn't do, right? Just like we think Putin may have actually had COVID, and that has caused some mental deficits because COVID has been known to do that, and that may be interfering with his thinking. It is possible that Joe's age or something specific to him and his health separate from his age is really starting to show now that he's getting older. And this is affecting his thinking as well, right? Great. Two geriatrics that have lost their mind. They're in charge of oh my God. I'm going to go start drinking. I'll be right back. And all of that with this Uranus in the third house. Now, the thing that's interesting with Uranus in the third house is third house also represents our neighbors. So as a country, when we talk about neighbors and communities, this would be the global neighborhood, our global neighbors. So there may be, before this term is over, some real pushback or conflict with our global neighbors, not just Putin, but certainly that may be the catalyst for the problems. Yeah, so this is not my idea of a great solar return. And again, right here, this is the dominant theme. Mars opposing Uranus, right? This impulse-driven action, like get it done last week, let's go, 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 without really thinking things through. His natal Mars is back on its natal position, which is part of that Mars-Pluto square, which makes him irrationally obstinate when he finally does commit to something. Thank God. The man is slow to make up his mind about things. So we got that. And of course, it's in opposition to this Saturn. Now, the thing about it also I want to point out here is that remember his moon is in Taurus, right? So his moon, which slows him down, so we don't have to worry about him making too quick a move. Too quick. The solar return Saturn is also squaring his moon. So again, there's a lot of pushback, and the moon represents the populace, which would be us. So if he does something or attempts to do something stupid, he's getting a lot of pushback and resistance from the general public, which would be us, as well as his family members. So his family may also be instrumental in or certainly his wife, in getting him to slow the hell down and stop his roll and think about what he's getting involved in. Maybe. We'll see. And also too, again, feeling his age, feeling father time, really wondering if these are all the best decisions to make. So decisions will be made slowly. That's the blessing here. Decisions will be made slowly and with due consideration and plenty of pushback from other people if it's not a great decision. But again, this right here, right? Frustration, frustration, frustration is the theme that we see here, right? I want to do, I want to go, I want to be, let's get it done, get it done, get it done. And, stop right there. You're not going any further. We'll let you know when you can go, right? This is his year. So there you go. Alrighty. So now we've got, because this wasn't confusing enough to look at before. So on the inside, this is the chart of the United States. In this middle ring, this is the chart for the administration, and the very outside ring is going to be Biden's solar return for this year. So we're not going to get too much into this in too much deep detail because we literally don't have that much time. So we're going to go over the very, very high points or dominant themes that we're looking at. So the first thing is we know that Biden in his solar return is carrying this Mars-Uranus opposition, right? That's just a pain in the butt right there. We also know that the inauguration chart carries their Mars and Uranus together, together, that progress, the progressives, right? And all of this is being activated. Now, here's where it gets interesting. At the same time this is happening, when we put these all together, the inauguration's Jupiter, okay, and Biden's Saturn, or the Saturn from his solar return, I'm so sorry, Saturn from his solar return, are all together setting up a T-square to this Mars-Uranus-Mars opposition. Jupiter and Saturn will give us an opportunity to, again, slow down, slow your roll, stop for a second, let's not be so hasty there, daddy. And kind of put the brakes on things as needed. Now, with that said, the administration's Jupiter and Biden's solar return Saturn are, it's going to be some problems because the administration is going to amplify and, well, I hate to say expose, but certainly make Biden painfully aware of his actual real world limitations and also his insecurities. So he's not going to feel as supported as he'd like to be, only because he's feeling very insecure, because his insecurities are being very clearly pronounced as a result of his interactions with the administration. But also, too, remember, Jupiter is a protective benefic influence, and Saturn, with restrictions and limitations, is also a very good planet. Saturn rules gravity. We like gravity. We'd like to have more of it. So with the administration's Jupiter on top of Biden's Saturn, this is also a protective influence. So along with amplifying his insecurities, making them very clear to himself, painfully aware of them, the administration's Jupiter on his Saturn will also act as a protective, beneficent planet or agent that will absolutely help move the needle, as it were, where it needs to go. So we have to lean very heavily on our administration if we're going to get anything done now, and moving forward. So again here, that's that Jupiter-Saturn we see, right? And of course, this is this Mars-Uranus, right? Uranus, Mars, Uranus, Uranus, and Mars. Okay, so this is all here. Everything in blue is the administration, by the way. Okay, now the other thing, and the most promising thing here also, is that the administration's Jupiter, or I'm sorry, no, Joe Biden's solar return Jupiter, sorry, outer solar return. Joe Biden's solar return Jupiter is on the USA moon. So what this does give us is, it does give us, again, protective, expansive, fortifying support from the president. So our best interests really are at heart here, or it would appear to be. So there's a deep connection, and Jupiter has a lot to do with integrity and ethics. So there's an ethical and integrity-driven feeling of connection to the country that will be at play throughout the year with Biden and the administration and the United States. So hang on to that. So this is good. Everything else that we're working with, we need something like that, and we've got it. So that's a good thing. This has been brought to you by Down to Earth Astrology and Primal Girl Wellness. I am Miss Jenny, and I am your astrologer. Please, if you'd like to get the next in this series, the next one will be looking backward to look forward. We will be discussing the solar return, lunar return, USA chart, and president and administration chart for Franklin Delano Roosevelt, or FDR, who is, by the way, a fascinating man, had a fascinating marriage, and had an amazing administration. FDR is notable in very, very specific ways. He is the president who single-handedly and his administration brought us successfully out of the Great Depression. He also successfully brought us out of World War II. And he is the only president who has ever been elected 4 times into office. And he is the last president who was inaugurated in March, not January. So there were some changes. that were made to the inauguration date after his presidency. Interesting stuff. So if you have time, by all means, go look him up and look up his marriage with Eleanor, who is also an amazing first lady in her own right and was also instrumental in making sure some really important good stuff got done. And that's it. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next video, where we will also be talking about, time permitting, and we don't have to break it up in a separate video, the prognostications for Biden and Putin in the Ukraine. That's it. Make sure you subscribe and hit the bell so you get notifications of the next video as it comes up. If you enjoyed this or didn't enjoy this, please, by all means, give me feedback. And if you're a history buff and you've got any information you'd like to add or share with us, by all means, please put it in the comments section below. If you have astrology questions, you can also put that in there as well. All right, we'll talk to you guys later. Bye.